Welcome back. Last week we learnt that a 5-year-old girl was taken into care after her weight reached more than 10 stone. So is allowing your child to become obese a form of child abuse?
Well, journalist Danny Levy says yes, it is, and that parents are solely to blame, whereas body image campaigner Natasha Devon says it's not, and parents just need to be re-educated. So welcome to both of you. You just look at the statistics here, and it says 30% of children aged between 2 and 5 in England are overweight.
2 and 15.
Oh, sorry, between 2 and 15 in England are overweight or obese. It's on the increase. It's a more serious problem than it ever has been before. So there has to be a reason for this. Why do you think that is?
I think that in the past few decades we have become more and more sedentary as a nation. We are very much pushed towards sitting and watching the television or playing computer games, and children are too. Whereas in the early 20th century they probably would have gone home after school and played outside. Now they're sitting at home and playing on their PlayStation or their Xbox, they're watching the telly, and often the parents are sat with them as well. And of course with that comes the junk food, the takeaways, and everything that sort of encompasses that sedentary lifestyle, unfortunately. So we do need to change the mindset of both the parents and the children.
Well, you've gone further than that. You've said it's severe child abuse.
Yeah, I do believe that this is child abuse and child neglect of the worst kind. I don't believe that these parents deserve to have children, and I don't think that they can argue that this is down to a lack of education. I think quite to the contrary, as I'm sure Natasha will point out, there is an awful lot out there in the media about body image, diet, fitness and health, and people are not that naive, they're not that poorly informed. And I do believe that because these parents themselves are lazy and sedentary and sit there eating junk food, they impose that on their children.
You say it's not abuse?
Well, I don't think it's as simple as Danny is portraying it to be. I think it's no coincidence that the more we know about diet and fitness, supposedly, and the more it is written about online and in the media, the larger we are becoming as a nation, because I think that a lot of people are very confused about the conflicting advice out there. I also think when I talk about education, I'm not talking about it's better to eat a carrot than a burger. Most people know that. I'm talking about education surrounding behaviours. It's really difficult. Your child looks you in the eye and says, "Mummy, I'm hungry." It's very difficult as a parent to deny them food. So how do you get around that, the habits that you fall into as a family?
I think that's very simple. I think if we don't stock our cupboards with chocolate and crisps and sweets and junk food, our children will not get fat.
So what would you see done then? Would you have these children removed from their families?
I would absolutely condone these children being confiscated from their parents. I think that children in schools should have regular health checkups which are specifically geared towards looking at their weight, and that these parents should be monitored because they need a shock, and unless they change their mindset and their own lifestyle, their children are going to suffer in later life.
Let me repeat the figure that Holly quoted at the beginning of this interview. 30% of children between 2 and 15 in England are overweight or obese. So that's 30% of those children. Where are you going to put them all if you take them away from their parents?
Well, I'm not suggesting, Phil, that we weigh somebody at school and say, right, you're clinically obese, so we're going to take you away from your parents. But I think that these parents need to be given some kind of warning, and that this needs to be monitored, because you cannot simply say, oh, well, your child is obese. You should really try to get it to go outside more and swap a Mars bar for an apple. You know, if a child is obese as a child, then their fat cells can actually replicate themselves. They can actually develop an increased number of fat cells as an adult, and therefore throughout their life they'll find it incredibly difficult to lose weight and keep
Natasha,
it off.
you said there was no intent to harm. Abuse is an intent to harm.
Absolutely.
But I have to say that isn't neglect abuse? So if you may not intend to harm your child, but your neglect because of the fact that you don't push them into exercise and you do fill them full of rubbish, that will cause them major issues in future life, as is proved. I'm not just making this up. So that's type 2 diabetes, that's problems with joints, that's problems with bones, that's problems with increased heart disease. Then you are, as a parent, guilty of abuse through neglect.
Well, I think there's two things that we're losing sight of here. First of all, there are worse things in life than being fat. And second of all, that when we talk about health, we have to take into account both mental and physical well-being. If you remove a child from its parents at a young age, you are going to do untold damage to their state of mind. Let's talk about what we're really condemning them to. You know, you're condemning them to having abandonment issues, issues with trust, not being able to hold down a relationship.
But I think you're condemning them to that. If you allow them to become obese, they're going to suffer mental, social and physical disqualification, not only as a child, but throughout their adult life.
We always talk about sort of the sort of emotional hold that food has over people, and the fact that, you know, parents may be feeding their children as a way of showing love. Like there's a much sort of greater, deeper thing.
And we need to take into account as well that, you know, when you have a baby, the first thing that you are told by the midwife is that you must make that baby eat, and if they put on weight, that's good, you're a good mum. And then suddenly that stops, and one day when your child's putting on weight, it becomes not a good thing.
Surely isn't that that's just common sense, isn't it?
Well, a lot of parents do show their children love by feeding them. I'm not saying that this is correct. I'm saying when you're going to hurl the term abuse at someone, it's such a strong term. You have to take into account, like I said, the intent.
It costs £5 billion a year. Obesity.
Yeah,
in
I
this
mean, we're
country.
not talking about chubby kids here. We're talking about children that are clinically obese. That does not happen by simply giving them a chocolate bar because they say that they're a bit peckish. You have to eat vast quantities of food in most cases to become clinically obese
But why
as
is
a
that
child.
happening? I think it's very easy to sit in judgment
Because the
and
parents
say
are lazy
that-
and abusive.
because they're lazy and abusive. So every parent with an overweight child is lazy and abusive. That's
I
what
would
you're saying.
say that the vast majority of them are, yes. You do not often see parents who are fit and healthy with obese children. I think that they are
I've seen
selfish and neglectful.
slim parents with overweight children, and I would like to think that we can approach this with a little bit more compassion and understanding. I believe that most parents want the best for their children.
Isn't the problem, and this is, I mean, these are all very controversial points we're making here, and we very much look forward to hearing your views. But when we use words like compassion, shouldn't we can't feel very bad about using the word fat. You have a fat child. It's got to be obese. It's overweight. You know, there are eating problems. No.
And
you
it is
feed
not
your
that
child a
child's
lot,
fault.
and so therefore you have a fat child.
There's a good reason for that. Between the ages of 0 and 7, we don't have something called critical facility. So if you tell a child that they are fat and that is bad between those ages, they're very likely to go on to develop something like
I'm
an
not
eating
saying that
disorder
to you
in
say to
later
the
life.
child. It would be being honest to the parent.
But then you've got to give the parents the tools they need to combat that.
How many more tools do they need? We've had every TV chef in the land saying, "Here's my healthy book." I think Jamie's
Well, it's
book
not
tops
working,
the...
so we try a different tack.
So what
And also
tack
there's an
do you
increase
take?
in anorexia as well, so it seems at both
Yeah.
ends of the scale in
And that's no
society, whether it's
coincidence.
overeating or undereating, there's an issue there, isn't there?
Yes, but again, obese children are more likely to develop eating disorders. So is it not important that we put a stop to this before they become obese? We are allowing children to become obese and then saying, what should we do about it?
But it's all well and good being professionally outraged, but what is it that's going to sort it out? We've already ascertained that you can't take 30% of these children away from their parents. So education doesn't appear to be working.
Well, I think that the government should make sure that state school children are doing more than 1 hour a week of PE. I think the state has to take some responsibility for children's activeness and fitness. I think the society that we've created, where people are locked into a cycle of binging and purging, of yo-yo dieting, we need to look at that.
Why
We need to
didn't it
take a
happen
fresh approach.
why didn't it happen 50, 60, 70 years ago?
Because there is a huge multi-billion-pound industry which has been built on people losing and putting on weight. It's because people are making money
So
out
it's the
of
diet- it's the diet
fatness
industry's
and our
fault.
children's fatness. I believe so, yes.
Final word.
My final word on this is that this is primarily down to diet, not exercise, which only accounts for about 13% of your basal metabolic rate, or what you use to keep you alive. This is a diet issue. These parents need shock, scare tactics, otherwise their children will be taken into care. That's the only way we can sort this out once and for all.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
wow.
you very much. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this. Rylan, what have you got?